The Bible Treasury. A monthly magazine of papers on scriptural subjects. Volume 19, Article 1, Part 89 of 93, 1892 and 1893. The Early Chapters of Genesis. By William Kelly. Genesis 11 verses 10 to 26. We are now presented with a genealogy which ends with Abram and is followed in the next chapter with the mighty principle of grace, God's call. That prepares the way outwardly. But Jehovah shines through this dealing and revelation. Here we have a special line. It is no more an endless genealogy than that of Adam to Noah in Genesis 5. We may notice 10 links in the chain of both chapters. But there are notable differences to be noticed also. The sorrowful chime is heard throughout the earlier one, and he died not once does the sound in the later one, though as a fact all spoken of in chapter 11 did die, whereas there was in chapter 5 the conspicuous exception of Enoch, who walked with God and was not, for God took him. Human life was so prolonged in those days, that it was all the more affecting to say of each with that exception, and he died. In the latter half of chapter 11 we read of the line of blessing, and we are told of each succession down to Abram, the time when the promise was made, and the years were lived, but nothing is said of death. Let who will count either accidental, the believer can hardly avoid seeing a distinct purpose in each, which may well awaken serious but happy reflections. Again, neither is drawn in the style of formal, legal, or historical documents. Each is suited to its own place where it is placed by inspiration, and either would be strange in any book but God's. Yet are they invested with such precise information over the earliest ages, before the deluge and after it, without a gap, that no genealogical line for that period outside of Scripture can be compared with it. But over and above reliable information as to every link in the chain, a special design on God's part governs in each case. This even now earthly learning fails to see, and it has no interest for those intent on literary questions. Yet how great a thing for those whose ears are open to the voice and teaching of God. But a divine purpose is as far as possible from casual documents or floating traditions from ancient sources, nobody knows whence, pieced together at a later date. The fact of a deep and distinct moral design pervading these lists respectively refutes the notion of any such trivial accident. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old, and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood, and Shem lived after he had begotten Arphaxad 500 years, and begot soils and daughters. And Arphaxad lived 35 years, and begot Shelah, and Arphaxad lived after he had begotten Shelah 403 years, and begot sons and daughters. And Shelah lived 30 years, and begot Eber, and Shelah lived after he had begotten Eber 403 years, and begot sons and daughters. And Eber lived 34 years, and begot Peleg, and Eber lived after he had begotten Peleg 430 years, and begot sons and daughters. And Peleg lived 30 years and begot Ru, and Peleg lived after he had begotten Ru 209 years, and begot sons and daughters. And Ru lived 32 years, and begot Serug, and Ru lived after he had begotten Serug 207 years, and begot sons and daughters. And Serug lived 30 years and begot Nahor, and Serug lived after he had begotten Nahor 200 years, and begot sons and daughters. And Nahor lived 29 years, and begot Terah, and Nahor lived after he had begotten Terah 119 years, and begot sons and daughters. And Terah lived 70 years, and begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran, verses 10 to 26. We may readily discern the speciality of this account by comparing it with what is said of the same progenitor in Genesis 10 verse 21. And to Shem, to him also were sons born, he is the father of all the sons of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder. The sons of Shem, Elam, and Asshur, and Arphaxad, and Lud and Aram. Here the aim is quite of another kind in a genealogy of Noah's sons parting into their several lands, every one after his tongue, family, and nation. Even so, it wears little or no resemblance to a document such as any human object might demand. For Elam and Asshur, though of celebrity among mankind, prominent also in the Bible and connected with Jewish story, are but named, though before Arphaxad, like Lud after him, and the apparently youngest, Aram, is introduced before Arphaxad. And the sons of Aram, Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Mash. Certainly, the divine wisdom of the record is not at all questioned, but it is not man's fashion. Divine design is stamped on this case, as in the other lists. There is neither repetition nor oversight, still less the clashing of differing documents or writers. Not the slightest evidence of solid worth has ever been alleged to shake the fact that Moses wrote every one of them, but the truth still more precious to the believer, and most solemn for every other, is that God is the author of all, and we can perceive that the design in chapter 10 was not to pursue Arphaxad's line there beyond his grandson, Eber's son Peleg, to state the deeply interesting fact of his name's reference to the division of the earth in his days. Thence it branches off to his brother Joktan, and his sons who settled in the south of Arabia west and east. Compared with his father Noah and those before him, Shem's years mark the growing diminution of human age after the flood. Yet it was given to him before he came near the end of his 600 years to live into the days not of Abram only but of Isaac. Peleg, the fifth in this series, did not reach half the limit of Shem's term, and Nahor, the father of Terah, dwindled to 145 years. So that in God's providential arrangements man was coming by rapid steps to the span of years ordinary since the prayer of Moses, Psalm 90, himself an exception as there have been a few even in modern times.